Why economists hate Trump's plan and how bad tariffs can hurt. Joseph Stiglitz, an economics professor at Columbia University and a winner of the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences, said, "Virtually all economists think that the impact of the tariffs will be very bad for America and for the world. They will almost surely be inflationary." But is that really the truth? Should we all be worried? That's what we'll discover in this video. And you don't have to like this video now, but if you like the content and it's useful, you have to promise me that you will like it at the end. So let's dive in. First of all, how do the tariffs work? The rules are simple on paper. Most imports from Canada and Mexico now face a 25% tariffs, except for Canadian oil, gas, and electricity, which are taxed at 10%. Meanwhile, all imports from China get hit with a 10% tariff. These measures went live on February 4th, 2025, just days after Trump signed the executive order on February 1st. So how does Trump have the power to do this? He used two legal tools: the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, the IEEPA, and the National Emergencies Act. These laws give the president the authority to regulate trade in the name of national security. But beyond the legal framework, what really matters is how these tariffs play out in practice. Every product that enters the US goes through Customs and Border Protection, the CBP, the agency responsible for making sure these new rules are enforced. When an importer brings in goods, they have to declare where they came from. That might sound straightforward, but it's not just a simple checkbox. CBP officers carefully inspect shipping manifests, invoice, and product origins to verify that everything is classified correctly. Any mistakes or discrepancies can lead to delays, fines, or even seizure of shipments. Once CBP confirms the shipment details, the tariff is calculated based on the total value of the imported goods. If a company brings in $1 million worth of auto parts from Mexico, they now owe an extra $250,000 in tariffs before they can even take possession of their shipment. These payments are required upfront. There's no pay later option. If the importer can't cover the tariff, the shipment gets stuck at customs, adding even more costs in storage fees and delays. And to keep everything running smoothly, businesses have to maintain meticulous records of all their transactions. Customs officials conduct random audits, and if a company is caught misreporting values or trying to game the system, the penalties can be severe, ranging from hefty fines to import bans. Some businesses are already looking for legal workarounds, such as modifying where their products are assembled to qualify for lower tariff rates, a strategy known as tariff engineering. On top of that, supply chains are getting more complicated. Increased customs scrutiny means shipments take longer to clear, causing delays that ripple through multiple industries. And then there's the risk of retaliation. Canada, Mexico, and China aren't happy about these tariffs, and they've already signaled that they might respond by placing their own tariffs on American exports. That could lead to a trade war, making it even harder for US companies to sell their products abroad. And now, moving to the second part of this video, why do economists think that the tariffs are a bad idea? You need to understand first that Trump's new tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China aren't just about trade. They're about power, pressure, and politics. One of the biggest reasons behind these tariffs is border security. The administration argues that Canada and Mexico haven't done enough to stop illegal immigration and drug trafficking, especially fentanyl, from flowing into the US. By slapping tariffs on their exports, Trump is turning up the heat, forcing these countries to crack down on risk-taking and economic hate. But it's not just about the border. Trump has always been vocal about America getting a bad deal in trade. He believes that the current system hurts American workers by making it easier for companies to manufacture goods overseas instead of at home. The idea behind these tariffs is that if importing products from Mexico or China becomes too expensive, companies might bring production back to the US, boosting jobs and local industry. Then there's China, which has been a target of US trade policies for years. Trump and his team argue that China has ripped off American businesses by stealing intellectual property and forcing companies to hand over technology in exchange for access to their market. These tariffs are meant to push back and pressure China into fairer trade practices. But there's also a bigger economic concern at play. Well, the tariffs only began to increase and be more imposed because the United States began to feel its national economy was threatened. And I think everyone remembers the DeepSeek case, which wiped out over $1 trillion from tech stock valuations. That kind of financial hit shocked confidence in the US economy, and the government started looking for ways to reinforce economic stability. Tariffs being one of them, of course. At the end of the day, these tariffs are less about the numbers and more about leverage. Trump is using them as a negotiation tool to get better trade deals, to force policy changes in other countries, and to show strength on the global stage. Whether they actually work the way he hopes, that's still up for debate. Now, many people would say that there's a great way to glimpse the future by looking at the past. And in the past, this already happened. One of the most famous examples was the chicken war between the US and Germany around 1962. At that time, the US was exporting large amounts of chicken to Germany. American fried chicken started gaining popularity among Germans, leading to a massive increase in imports, reaching $50 million, which would be equivalent to about $500 million today. This surge in imports triggered protests in Europe, especially from German chicken farmers who felt threatened by the competition. To curb this wave of imports, Germany raised tariffs on imported chicken, increasing the price of 5 pounds of chicken from 1.6 to 2.25. As a result, US chicken exports to Germany plummeted from $50 million to just $20 million in 1963, a 60% drop. The US didn't take this decision lightly. In retaliation, they slapped a 25% tariff on German car imports, directly affecting automakers like Volkswagen. Before the tariff, the US was importing around 4,000 German cars every 3 months. But after the tax hike, that number was cut in half. Just 2,000 cars imported in the same period in 1964. This trade war didn't just impact chicken and automobiles. It had ripple effects across the economy. Consumers paid more for imported chicken, German car sales took a hit, making models like Volkswagen less affordable. Other automakers seized the opportunity to raise their prices and increase profits. Inflation surged, driving up prices across various products in the market. And that was just one chapter in the long history of global trade conflicts. So, economists tend to roll their eyes at tariffs because historically they've done more harm than good. Sure, they sound like a great idea on paper, tax foreign goods, protect local industries, and create jobs, right? But in reality, things rarely work out that smoothly. First, tariffs make stuff more expensive because when companies have to pay extra to import materials or products, they don't just absorb the cost out of kindness. They pass it on to consumers. That means higher prices on cars, electronics, food, and pretty much anything that comes from abroad. And since many American companies rely on global supply chains, even made in the US products can end up costing more. Then there's the retaliation factor. Countries don't just sit back and accept tariffs, they fight back with their own. When the US raises tariffs on Chinese or European goods, those countries slap tariffs on American exports. Suddenly, US farmers, manufacturers, and businesses find themselves locked out of key markets or forced to sell at a disadvantage. It's like starting a fight where everyone gets punched. And let's not forget the job argument. While tariffs might protect some industries, say American steel workers, they often hurt others. Companies that rely on imported materials might cut jobs or move production elsewhere to avoid paying higher costs. Past tariff wars have shown that for every job saved, others get lost somewhere else in the economy. If that weren't enough, tariffs also slow down economic growth. Countries do business with each other because specialization makes things cheaper and more efficient. When tariffs disrupt that system, companies have to waste time and money adjusting, shifting suppliers, renegotiating contracts, and rethinking production. It's like throwing a wrench into a well-oiled machine. At the end of the day, economists see tariffs as short-term political plays that create long-term headaches. They might win some quick points by looking tough on trade, but history shows that it tend to backfire, leaving consumers paying more, businesses scrambling, and the economy taking an unnecessary hit. And I'm not specifically guaranteeing that the tariffs will greatly and badly affect the economy, okay? If the Trump administration manages to balance a package of measures to control inflation, or tariffs do not last too long, or other types of decisions that can affect the economy positively, we could have a different ending or a mild trade war. His arguments for tariffs actually make some sense, and we can hope that the impacts will not be so negative for the world and American citizens. I just wanted to make it clear why you have seen so much negative news about tariffs. My point is to keep you informed and help you protect your money. And going to the third part of this video, how this might impact you. Well, basically, inflation, things will cost more. Let me give you another example that is simple to illustrate. Imagine there are 3 cell phone manufacturers, one Korean, one Chinese, and one American. Now, let's say the Korean and Chinese companies have to pay a 10% tariff. Even though the American company doesn't face that tariff, to stay competitive, it will still raise its prices by at least 5%. Your role is not just to save, but to invest your money to protect it from inflation. And right now, inflation in the United States is 3%. This is the kind of information you need to stay on top of and have at your fingertips every month. And why is that important? Because you need to calculate the real return of your investments. For example, over the last 10 years, the average annualized return of the S&P 500 was 14.7%. However, the 10-year break-even inflation rate in the US was 2.43%. It might not seem like much, but it makes a big difference. If you invested $500 every month with a 12% return, you'd have around $110K after 10 years. But if you had earned a 14.7% return, that would grow to 127K, 17K more. That's enough for an international trip, right? Well, that's it, cousins. Stay invested until the next video, and bye-bye.